Hello and welcome to the latest from Hearts Standard. My name is Joel Sked and I'm delighted to be joined for the first time by Laurie Dunsire. Laurie, how's it going?
I'm good. Is it the first time?
So I think this is the first time on Hearts Standard.
Oh, okay.
Long,
Well, delighted to be here. I'm just glad that the fact that I wear a Hearts tie to go and commentate actually paid off for a change because someone actually gets to see it. Because normally,
there you go.
normally I'm just behind the mic.
There you go. Always representing, always well dressed, turning up to matches home and away. We are here to discuss Heart of Midlothian's 3-2 win over Kilmarnock, just a second win over Kelly at Tynecastle or at home in 12 matches and the fifth in 22 matches. I think I make it. It was, as you said before the game when we were chatting, Laurie, that it's almost old firm records levels of bad at home to Kilmarnock. But Hearts did find a way to win. How are you feeling after that match?
I think relief would be the biggest overriding feeling. I think that's what you could feel around Tynecastle as well. We'll obviously talk about the game in a bit more detail, but it still had an air of a game that, and I think I said to you afterwards, like with that moment when the ball came in the box and I think Robbie D's got a free header, the flag did go up. I thought it was actually quite tight. I just imagine a long ball into the box or a cross and just a header diverted into the bottom corner, and you just hear that away end erupt. It just had that feeling, cold afternoon, nervous Tynecastle, the floodlights on. And just, the fact that last time we played Killie at home, and I think Neil Critchley maybe said this, I thought we actually played better for a lot of that game, at least more controlled. And then suddenly there was just this 5-minute spell where Killie just absolutely turned the game on its head. And it wasn't quite the same time. And it was a bit earlier in the second half when they equalised, but you just had a feeling like this could go south. And yeah, I agree with Neil Critchley that for a lot of that game, it's the poorest we've played, at least the most disjointed I think we've played in recent games. At the same time, there was a spell after it went 3-2 where Hearts probably should have put themselves out of sight.
Yeah.
So I think it was just one of those, I'm just glad we got over the line. And I think it says maybe a lot about the team that we are getting over the line in those situations, because on another day, could have very easily have ended with a 3-3 or maybe even worse if the luck hadn't gone with us.
Yeah, it felt there were periods in the game where it just seemed very chaotic, and where it was both teams looked like they could either score or shoot themselves in the foot, and we saw that. I think the best aspect of that was towards the end where Musa had three really good chances, and then at the same time Kelly were putting the ball into the box and doing what they do really well and putting you under pressure, and Craig Gordon come up with a great save from David Watson. So yeah, it did seem to. There was times where I thought, right, this first half didn't think Kelly offered all that much, and then when it went 3-1, just like, right, that just go and see it out. But yeah, it's with this Hearts team, this season, it's not going to be straightforward.
Yeah, and I think the first half especially was just so stop-start. I think Kilmarnock managed to commit, I think, 10 fouls in the first half alone, which is more than a lot of teams will commit in a game.
Yeah,
I think the total fouls were 17. I had to look back to Aberdeen's visit to Tynecastle last time there was a league game that a team in a Hearts game committed as many fouls as that in a match, and it played into the frustrations and the nerves at Tynecastle, I think, because there just wasn't any flow to the game whatsoever.
Yeah, there was a moment where James Penrice, towards the end of the first half, kind of remonstrated with John Beaton as he sat on the ground. It's like, what are you going to do? They just keep fouling. That's what he seemed to be suggesting. They keep fouling us. Anyway, going back to, we'll jump right back to the start and we'll talk about the team lineup. There's two changes. Just touch on that before we get into the nuts and bolts of the game. Two changes from the win over Brechin. We saw Blair Spittle come back in, and we saw James Wilson come back in. Kenneth Vargas and Jan Danda went out of the team. Were you relatively happy with the lineup as you saw it?
Yeah, I don't think there was too many surprises about it. Spittle, I think, was the only reason he was out for the Brechin game was resting / rotation. So I think we expect him to come back in. And again, Wilson, I think, was the same. We thought he would get a break at some point. I was happy enough with the team. The one thing with this kind of 4-4-2 that obviously Neil Critchley is obviously keen to implement, I'm still not quite sure we have the players for it. You know, the left side has a nice dynamic with Penrice and Spittle linking up. I don't see how the right really works right now. I don't think Forrester was at his best in this game. I think especially defensively showed a few deficiencies.
Struggles.
George Grant isn't really a right-sided midfielder. I'm just not sure how it works. And Wilson and Cabangu, which we'll talk about, and I thought they both did well, but I'm still not sure if with the personnel we currently have, whether a 4-2-3-1 would suit them slightly better to allow the link into attack, because of that Wilson and Cabangu, when they got on the ball and they made some runs, looked dangerous, but we still struggled, I thought, to get the play up to them, especially for the first half and then maybe into the second. So I'm happy enough with it. You can kind of see what Critchley's trying to do. I'm just not entirely sure personnel-wise if we're quite there, and whether the next kind of a week or so, just under a week with the transfer window, might decide what does work best system-wise. And I'd be keen to see Gerald Taylor get back up to speed. I know he had some huge ups and then huge downs when he was in, but at the moment, I just think, and we'll probably talk about it, I'm just not sure Forrester's quite ready, and some teams will expose that, and Killy did to an extent.
Yeah, I definitely think. I think you'll see Taylor fit into that role where you see Penrice bombing up, and I think Taylor's got that capacity to do so. And then when you have that, then it allows Grant to maybe go infield a wee bit more, or whoever you play on that right side. Again, you don't really have a Critchley never really played wingers, like out and out wingers, and we've talked plenty about how ineffective a lot of the wide options have been this season. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next couple of weeks brings in terms of signings, but also when he brings Taylor in and how he plays them. I suppose with the first half, you messaged me at halftime. It's like, well, how long do we have to speak after the game, because it obviously wasn't great. Hearts went ahead through Elton Cabangu's tap-in. It was perfectly placed after both George Grant and James Wilson. I had fortunate efforts or touches. I don't think either meant to where the ball went.
It's interesting you say that, because in commentary I said the same, that I didn't think George Grant or James Wilson meant to do what they did. Someone messaged me on Twitter, I think it was, saying they did. I watched it again, and I think I could maybe give Wilson, when you see the way he diverts, he's looking at Cabangu. So I think there's a slight deliberate attempt from Wilson to do what he did. I'm not good. If someone tells me George Grant is trying to pick out Wilson back across the goal, I'm not having that. But
I can confirm that George Grant definitely did not mean that.
No, that's what I was feeling. But I think if you look at Wilson again, he's not looking at goal. When I look at the replay back at home, he is looking back across the box, and he kind of diverts it that way. So I'll maybe give him, and he's getting an assist either way. And yeah, an easy tap for Cabangu, but I do like the positions he takes up. Obviously, there's so many strikers you see that people say, just scores tap-ins. Like, Chris Boyd was the king of that. He would just be in the right position so many times. But if it was that easy to just do it, then every striker would just score a barrel load of tap-ins, and every striker would be prolific. I think he takes up good positions. He makes good runs. So I think that's encouraging. And yeah, I think for a home debut to get off the mark in the league and add to his 2 cup goals, it was really positive. And I've got high hopes for him right now.
Yeah, same, and I suppose that's a good jumping off point to talk about him and Wilson as a partnership, because you kind of mentioned it earlier on, and they're not. I wrote about it in my instant analysis. They're not a traditional partnership, because and Critchley mentioned it afterwards when I asked him about it, and he talked about them in training. They make a lot of this similar runs, so they've had to work on it, and it felt like it was the pair of them worked because they put the work in. So they were very energetic, but you could tell that they would probably be better playing with someone like a Shankland, someone and like Boyce before. Whereas I think they can get away with it just because of their work rate, their attitude, and just their willingness to make it difficult for opposition. And it did help that when Hearts went a bit longer or played a percentage ball, that both of them would chase it. They would make it difficult for the Killie defence. Wilson, and they both had good moments, whereas they never really kind of combined the way that Shankland and Cabangu combined in the build-up to one of Musa's chances, but it worked. And I think with Elton, you can see, you mentioned him getting into positions. There was one where we won the corner, which we scored from. Wilson had got into the box, and Cabangu was in a great position. He just unfortunately couldn't get into him. But then also Cabangu, you can tell he's intelligent. He's an experienced guy. He'll help bring Wilson on when they play together. But yeah, it was. I kind of mentioned it was a partnership kind of based on energy and vibes. Whether it's a long-term one, I'm not sure. It needs work.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's kind of feeds into what I'm saying about the way we're setting up, and does it suit who we've got right now? I would almost feel that maybe, having, and this all depends on Shankland getting back to his best, but a Shankland sitting in that 10 role, like when he came on, we shifted to more of a 4-2-3-1, and Shankland was kind of sitting in the 10 role, and having one of them ahead of him, similar to what we did with Ginnelly, especially. I always reference that as one of the best runs of, I say, attacking play from us consistently, when we moved Ginnelly into out-and-out striker role and Shankland playing behind him, in terms of effectively getting in behind defences, because Shankland wants to drop in, he wants to hold the ball up, he wants to link up with people, but we know if you put him out-and-out 9, he just doesn't have the pace, and he also doesn't have the kind of aerial ability to be more of a target man. So I'd be interested to see how that would work, and it would also work better, I think, with the players sitting behind, whether that's, maybe Spittle one side and Sander Khartoum when he comes in the other. And then if you've got the two sitters, it maybe suits Devlin and Benny more. But again, that would probably depend on opponent who you put in there. So I'm just not convinced by this shape as a long-term solution. I think today, like I said at halftime, Tynecastle would be a lot more frustrated if it wasn't for the fact we actually got a goal, because the game was pretty even. There wasn't much between the sides up until halftime anyway. And it was a really bad game to watch at that point. It was just scrappy, lots of fouls. And yeah, I think in some ways we got away with it today, but as we'll get onto, we could have easily scored 4 or 5 goals if Musa Drama had his boots on the right feet.
And I suppose the other talking point from the first half was Craig Halkett's injury. So he went off early on. I can't remember the specific minute, but
11th minute. It was just after, a few minutes after
as early as that.
Yeah,
I hadn't realised it was quite as soon after Cabangu opened the scoring, but he went off. Thankfully, he walked off. He didn't look in too much. Not like too much pain or discomfort, which was encouraging. Critchley, while he wasn't 100%, she suggested it was a hamstring issue. So kind of fingers crossed, as you mentioned, it's hopefully just a precaution, just the way Halkett kind of just trying to manage himself. We've obviously, you talk forever about Halkett, his ability, but also his availability as well. And then it meant that Lewis Nielsen came on. So the back four was Adam Forrester, Lewis Nielsen, Jamie McCart, and James Penrice. Not the back four that anyone would have expected at the start of the season. And it definitely...
Or a month ago.
I think, or a month ago, yeah. I definitely think it had... and we can move into the second half. I definitely think it had an impact on the team. I think with Halkett coming out, Hearts lost something in there, kind of, especially on that right-hand side. It was an inexperienced right-hand side, and I think it showed at times.
Yeah. As soon as that happened, I was thinking to myself, if I'm Kilmarnock, I'm trying to get down that left-hand side. And ironically, I know that the 2 goals actually came from balls from the right, but obviously the second one's attacking from the left. But it definitely rocked us, because we'd had 3 clean sheets in the league before this. In fact, the only goal we conceded of the 4 games was that absolute wonder goal from Scott Bright that you can't really blame on anyone. But it did change, because the last few games I've been quite comfortable with Hearts holding a lead or sitting at 0-0, because Craig Halkett and Jamie McCart are very solid and experienced. I think Halkett's issue is fitness and staying away from injuries, basically, not his kind of defending ability. But it did change that dynamic. The interesting thing with Lewis Nielsen now is he's obviously played for St Johnstone, and now he's played for Hearts this season. So I feel like Hearts would want him to try and move him on, especially with Steinwender coming in. But the only option now is St Johnstone take him back or Hearts keep him, because no one else is going to be able to play him this season. So I don't know if that changes that dynamic. But the last time he played at Hearts, I was looking, it was early 2023, and James Hill started that game, and Robert Snodgrass was still the toast of Tynecastle, and we were still holding out for Garang Kuol to be the next big thing. So it feels like an eternity ago. So with no surprise then that he seemed a little bit off it at times. I mean, he's a big guy. He can be solid at times, but a whole new partnership, and I'm not convinced that's going to be a viable option, albeit I'd be surprised now if we managed to move him on until the end of the season. So I'd hope that Steinwender would get up to speed. I wonder, and you maybe touched upon this more already, but if we get another centre back in at this point, because I know Steinwender is maybe more of a medium to long term solution. I think the idea was that McCart and Halkett would still be the starters, but even if it is a hamstring, we've seen this with Halkett before. He said he's periodic month or so out with a hamstring. I know his big issues are with his knee, but it's hard to rely on Craig Halkett, unfortunately, availability wise. You rely when he's in the team and he's up to speed. Yep. He's one of the best centre backs around, but if he's not in the team, I wouldn't be confident with us if we're going to start with that back four. If we're going to Dundee next week, if we're playing Rangers after that, I would worry. And if I was the opposition, I would be looking to expose that as much as possible.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, going forward, I think ideally Critchley's back four would be Penrice, Taylor, Halkett and McCart. And then you can't, even with... So my expectation or belief was that Lewis Nielsen would go out on loan again, just because he had... There'd be no point in him kind of hanging around, and I don't know what his long-term future at the club is. But then when you add in, even for example, see if Halkett had not been injured today, but the news that Oyegoke's on the way out, I would think, well, that kind of keeps Nielsen at the club just as backup. But then it'll be interesting. I think that'll be a big decision to make, is to find out quickly how important Halkett's or not important, how serious his injury is. And then if it is, then you're probably having to go back into the market, because that leaves you at centre back with Jamie McCart, Steinwender, who is coming back into after a pre-season, or having a pre-season, and then Lewis Nielsen as well. So it's
I think we might need to, regardless, even if Halkett's injury is not serious and he's back back next week or whatever. For me, that just gives me the scare that if Oyegoke is going, and Oyegoke's actually done pretty well at centre back for a few games. Mm-hmm. I think he's more of a right-sided centre back than a full back. It's one thing why that dynamic sometimes works at right back, because, and we saw it at the Killie, it's the Killie first goal when the ball's played down at the channel. Penrice is way up the park, but sometimes it works better for Hearts when you've got Oyegoke in there, because we almost shift into a 3. But when McCart goes across to meet Watkins, it basically, at that point, it just leaves Nielsen and Wales in the middle, and it's a fantastic finish by Bobby Wales. But if we've got two players up there like that, it shouldn't have that much room. But so if Oyegoke is going, even if Halkett's injury is not serious at all, I think we're going to have to go into the market, because at the moment Steinwender, it's a bit of an unknown how quickly he's going to need to get up to speed, and I wouldn't want to be relying on him and McCart at this stage, because McCart himself has only just joined the club a few weeks ago. So I think we definitely need to go into the market, I would say, because relying on Nielsen being a potential starter, with all due respect to him, I don't think that's a risk we want to take right now.
I would say if they are comfortable with Halkett's, if they don't think it's anything serious, then I think they'll probably be fine going with it, just because you have to take into consideration that they're actually trying to get this the size of the squad.
I know.
Which is
this is more my nerves maybe than me actually expecting Hearts will do it. But then
I kind of look at it as like, ideally you'd like someone who could fill in it. Ideally you'd like a left centre back who can play left back, but then you're kind of looking for someone on the right side, because McCart should be, so there's a balance factor there. So we'll see how it transpires with Halkett. But
that's, you can play across the entire back line. We've not had a player who can do that for a while, have we?
I'm just trying to think.
Patrick Kisnorbo.
Kisnorbo. someone like him would be ideal. But you're looking, if they had to go back at the market, you're probably just happy with just a loan deal, kind of stopgap, to help ease your nerves more than I know anything else. So kind of talked about we talked about defence just there with the struggles. I do think I think just before kind of moving on to the end of the game, what's your view on Forrester? Just that I think he's someone who's grown into the role as a first team player, especially at right back, but definitely he's still definitely got areas that he needs to improve on, or he's still quite raw. He did struggle up against Fraser Murray today.
Yeah, I mean, he's still young, so I never like to labour criticism too much at someone who's 19, and until Stephen Naismith lost his job, basically we barely seen him in any sort of sense at all. So that's when he came in, and I like what he offers going forward at times. I think he gets up that side well. I think we've seen him get balls into the box quite a bit. So sometimes I thought he offered a bit more going forward than Daniel Oyegoke, but defensively, players getting behind him. To be fair, I don't think Craig Gordon covered himself in glory at the second Kilmarnock goal either, with the ball into the box. But I think as a fullback, you'd hope your goalkeeper would guide you there. He's either going to come out and just clear it, get a punch on it or whatever, or he's going to guide you through it, give you a proper shout, go back on his line. But Craig Gordon kind of doesn't go for the gross, and he comes out. Forrester, I've not actually looked at this one back yet, but Forrester just gets caught under it, and Fraser Murray, it's just a really messy goal.
Yeah, so, he doesn't seem to know Fraser Murray's there. I think he almost gets a fright that he's there.
You just need to, I think speaking to Jimmy Sanderson about it, obviously many moons ago, he was a defender himself, and he says if you're caught like that and you're not sure, you just need to basically attack the ball and flick it and get your head on it as if someone is right on top of you. Whether they are or not, you just have to play it that way. Even if it's just diverting it out for a corner kick, you just have to play it that way. You can't wait for something to happen. So, but that'll come with experience. He's pretty new to this, and I think for me, I guess the concern again is just what Gerald Taylor are we going to get when he comes back in? Because, we were all waxing lyrical about him after the Rangers game and obviously the Spurs friendly that came before it, when we thought this guy is absolutely incredible. And then Dens Park happened, which why I'd be slightly nervous about giving him his league return in our next game, which is at Dens Park, when he had a first half that was just chaos. That's my worries. I hope we get the Gerald Taylor that we saw against the likes of Spurs and Rangers, not the Gerald Taylor that we saw at Dens and then kind of went off the boil before his injury. So, yeah, right side is still a concern. But, I mean, even the left, this is the problem with our back four. Penrice is great. He's been absolutely fantastic. But the way he plays does still leave gaps in behind. So there is a lot of pressure on those two centre-backs sometimes. And you saw it with the way Kilmarnock played the ball into the channel. So, yeah, a player who's learning. I think he's got a lot of potential, and he had a tough one today. I just think we need to have an option. It means, like James Wilson, I don't think we want to be relying on him as our first choice or a starter. We need to have other options in there.
So I suppose it's hard to distill the rest of the game down because it was so chaotic. With you've got so Bobby Wills, you mentioned, scored, great finish. I thought he was really poor in the first half. Great finish running across Nielsen in the bottom corner, and then Jamie Clark headed Hearts back in front, and then Grant scored a bizarre header where Kieran O'Hara really did not cover himself in glory whatsoever. Then you just thought easy street. Then Fraser Murray scored that goal we were just talking about to make it 3-2. At that time, you're thinking it's either going to finish 3-3 or 4-2. Remarkably, it didn't, but there were chances either side. And you talked about it. One of the first things you said was one of the biggest positives is Hearts found a way to win. And they did that, but it could have been so much easier if Musa had scored, but at the same time, Craig Gordon made a fantastic save. And then other than that, Kilmarnock put the ball in dangerous areas and made it nervous, but didn't really create anything. What kind of did you, rather than focus on one incident, but was there anything you learned from that last bit of the game?
That we need players who can finish. Again, I don't like singling players out too much. And Musa Drama has And I think Scott, when he was on the Heart Standard, was it Friday you recorded it, talked about him as well. He's added something. His kind of physicality, the kind of running in behind, the just ruffling up defenders. He's added something, but technically he's still way off it from what we need. Whether he'll ever get there, I'm not convinced. But yeah, there's one chance where he needs to hit it with his left foot, and he tries to hit it with his right. And I was hoping that it took a deflection because it went horrendously off target. And then as the two he gets in on goal, he does really well with one to take it past Corey and Daba, but shots basically the goalkeeper. The one he hits the post, slightly unlucky. So we need to be more decisive in those moments. And it's like you say, it wasn't like Kilmarnock created a whole bunch of big opportunities, but it's just that chaos factor. I think for me, the nerves were the fact if it was Halkett and McCartan there, I probably would have felt a lot more settled. Like in the Dundee United game, even in the Aberdeen game was slightly different. It was 0-0, but in those games, I didn't feel too nervous about the other team going forward because the defence looked very settled. But in this game, with the way we were playing and who we had back there, it just looked a bit nervy. Like Lewis Nielsen, you could tell he wasn't in tune with everyone. There was one point where he thought, I can't remember who it was he was with, but the ball broke free.
Benny.
And he took a step back. It was Benny to let him get the ball. And the Kilmarnock player just came in and went, well, all right, if none of you want it, then I'll take it. And suddenly Kilmarnock were running through, and it was like, just clear the ball or play a pass. It just, I think Tynecastle, unfortunately, adds to the nerves in those games, because if you're in an away game like at Tannadice, the Hearts End, the nerves don't come out as much. They're getting right behind their team. But at Tynecastle, it just spills out, even though you're winning. That the nerves spill out, like the frustration, and I can feel it myself at the back of the wheat field. So for me, it was just an important game to get over the line. I can't read too much into it because of the game the players we had out at that point. And I think we still need something else between midfield and attack. We've talked about defence, but I think that was kind of victim of opportunity in the game in terms of Halkett going off. But I'm very interested to see where Khartoum fits in. You've talked about him already. Can he be someone who picks the ball up and drives forward with it? Because as we talked about, that midfield, Spittle does a bit linking up on the left. Grant doesn't do it enough. And Cammy and Benny are often ball carriers, although Benny can carry it forward. So I'd be interested to see how that dynamic fits in, because at Dens Park would be a different type of game. I probably wouldn't want to see the same starting 11 for that game.
Nah.
Don't know about you.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think I would quite like to see Taylor come back in as Dens, try and kind of try and
exercise those demons.
Exercise those demons. That's it. And yeah, Khartoum's an interesting one, because I watched him and thought these could be he could be similar to Spittle on the right. Tom Irvin watched him and did a piece that you can read on Heart Stand, and he thinks he can be a box-to-box midfielder, the kind of someone who can be a goal threat in midfield.
He makes a lot of runs. I watched a few clips and a few of his goals. He makes a few runs in behind.
Gets into really good areas. Which is really encouraging for a midfielder. Gets into good goal scoring areas, and we don't really have that. Don't have that at all. A lot of players want to come to the ball, and then you never know with Neuenhoff. So yeah, we'll see. But Hearts won 3-2, and it meant that the team rose finally from 11 for the first time. Results seem to go our way, and I've just popped the league table as it stands on the screen just now, and you can see that Hearts are now just 3 points off the top 6, 3 points off 6th place Hibs, and 10 points off Dundee United in Europe. But we'll maybe leave that European look for a couple of more weeks.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, certainly the top 6, and you're going into away to Dundee with real belief, because I'll put this table here, which is the league table as it stands, and then the one that you sent me, Laurie, I'll put this up is Neil Critchley
table.
The Critchley table, which is much better viewing, with Hearts in 3rd place, just ahead of Dundee United due to goals scored. But yeah, so how are you feeling now after that result, and just how basically just the direction of the team?
I should credit Tony Brown, actually posted that on Twitter. That wasn't me, but I took it from him. I think it shows the progress we've made. I think some people, and I think that's a lot of the frustration. Fans have seen the league table. I think what's happened with a lot of teams, Aberdeen especially, you can see the huge drop off from them. Teams in the bottom
Very funny.
half. Yeah, it is. It's very funny. Teams in the bottom half have started picking up a lot of points. We've seen that with Ross County recently, with Dundee, St Mirren today, Hibs especially have shot up the table. So teams above us have started winning games, unfortunately, when we have, which is why Hearts haven't pulled away. The interesting challenge now, and I thought today's result went pretty well. Maybe would have preferred a draw between Aberdeen and St Mirren, albeit the laugh the laugh we had would be taken away from it. But realistically, Aberdeen have still got a massive gap on Hearts because of that first half of the table. You're looking at fifth, and realistically, there's no reason why Hearts couldn't think we can get fifth place in that table. 4 points. I think, funnily enough, it's the bigger challenge is making sure you get in that top 6, because the game's obviously run out. You'll 9 left before then. So you want to make it into that top 6, and then you've got a chance to push on 5th. I know you'd want to look at as high as 4th, but I just think that's still quite unrealistic just because of how many points on the board Aberdeen have. So I think you're looking at 5th. Motherwell, I've not been overly impressed with when I've seen them recently. I thought they were very poor at Tynecastle. I think even Stuart Kettlewell said 1-0 flattered them. So Hibs probably more dangerous in terms of those teams in the current top 6. So if we can get a few results on the board and we can get into the top 6, then I think 5th place is something we should target. If you can get above that, you never know, but you just need a real big swing to get that. So not against the not completely against the realms of possibility, but I think we've seen enough to show that Neil Critchley's taken the team in the right direction. Now what we want to see is a push for a top 6 place over the next 9 games. And there's no reason why we can't, but we need to keep this run going. And I think Dundee away is a game that fans will be hoping to win. But you've seen Dundee, the game, they've made it very difficult for teams like Celtic and Rangers recently going there. So it won't be an easy match by any stretch of the imagination. If we can get a victory next week, then I'll start to think of European spots like you are. But I'm still very aware that we're only 2 points above a potential relegation place. So we've got to
I know.
We've got to just take it easy still.
Yeah, I think I turned to I was sitting beside Tony Brown at the game today, and I turned to him and said that I think next week will be, or the set to pal. I can't remember. I've just been saying it to everyone listen, that I think next week will tell us a lot. If Hearts go up and win at Dens Park, I think that we should be looking at beyond top 6. I think just because, like when you mentioned about Motherwell, I think they're going to drop. I think they could drop like a stone. I think they could easily finish 10th or 11th just the way they're going. And Kettlewell seems to have agitated. Well, he has agitated the fan base. You can see that the record recently has not been great. Losing to St Johnstone today as well, and then I think so. If you got a win next week, it builds momentum, and like you said, to get to go beyond top 6 and into Europe, you need to go on a run. And if we are unable to do that, because we've been unbeaten in the last 6, I think it is now. It's been a case of kind of win, draw, etc. So, but you need to start putting wins together. Lose or draw, and you're thinking, right, it's just a battle to get top 6, to avoid 10th and try and get in top 6. Whereas winning just gives you a much more positive outlook. But yeah, the bringing up the Critchley league table again is it shows that the team are in the right direction, because I think it was a few games ago you looked at it and Hearts were maybe 4th in that, and then the teams below them there was like 6 teams below them with one or two fewer points, but now there's a wee bit of separation. So it's encouraging, and then he's starting to bring in his mould into his old his own team. He's having to deal with injuries. He's had to deal with a hectic game schedule. I think there's a perception around it that it's not been as good, just because we've had some horrendous results or horrendous moments, especially around the festive period. But yeah, it does show that we're on the right track.
Yeah.
what I'll finish up with is we've spoken enough about. We were only going to do 10, 15 minutes. We've blabbered on for ages, but we'll just quickly finish up on Daniel Oyegoke. He was not in the squad today. Asked during the game, Hearts, and they said that he was not playing as a precaution. Was it a precaution because of injury? It was a precaution because he is on the verge of leaving the club. Neil Critchley confirmed afterwards that the Hearts are in negotiations with another club and it's close to being finalised. I believe the other club is a Serie A team, and it could represent a fairly sizable profit on what Hearts bought from Brentford B, from what I understand. And if that goes through, what do you make of the deal? Because I mean, I think it is going by social media, the mentions on Twitter or X is it's split. There's a third of people going, "Oh, fair play to him." There's or fair play to him or fair play to Hearts. There's some that are thinking, "Oh, it's a shame that we're losing him," and then there's some where they are cock a hoop at getting a fee for Daniel Oyegoke. Where do you sit?
I think somewhere in between. I mean, I'm not being blown away by him, but I think he's shown in a lot of games that he's a solid player. I think I mentioned earlier, I still think he's probably a right-sided centre-back, maybe in a 3.
Yes.
It's funny because we kind of brought him in as a sort of Toby Sibbick replacement, and I always thought that about Toby Sibbick as well, that he wasn't quite a right-back. He wasn't a good centre-back in a pairing. He was sort of like a right-sided centre-back in a 3, but he didn't always get played there. Someone messaged me saying it's Hellas Verona that he's going to, but I have no idea if that's a proper link or.
Yeah, same.
I'm just throwing out there based on just someone telling me that, but no links. Not anyone who's got any journalism or links to the club, so it could be nothing. Somewhere in between. He's been a solid enough player. Like I said, my concern would be that we don't have the same cover, because what he does offer is cover at centre back and right back, which is quite useful, especially when the likes of Halkett's had injury problems. Taylor obviously has had injury problems. But if we can make a profit on someone like that, I can understand why the club wants to accept that. You know, we've lost a lot of players like that for nothing, or we've just had to let them go at the end of their contracts, or they've cost us money to get off the books. So I understand it. I just hope we've got cover, because for me, he was fine. He had some good games. He had some bad games. I would have been interested to see if he could have kicked on, because he's still quite young as well. If he could have kicked on under Neil Critchley, he's had some positive matches. So I would be okay with it. I'm in the middle. I'm not gutted he's going. I think he could be a miss as a squad player if we don't have the right cover, though. That's the only thing.
Yeah, so I think you can separate two ways. Short term, there might be just a concern, like you said, with the cover with Halkett's injury. Longer term, unless Neil Critchley wants to go to a back 3, I don't really see a long term place for him in the team. And also, you just see it as an opportunity to make money on a guy who might not be a regular member of the first, not the first team, the starting 11, and looking ahead to the summer. I think there's going to be big changes just with Jamestown in now. They're analysing players, they're seeing who fits and who doesn't. If Daniel Oyegoke doesn't fit and they're able to flip him for a profit after bringing him in the summer, that's a positive. People going about the player trading, and yes, there's not been the big millions that have been brought in by a player, but he does represent another profit, like Alex Cochrane, Kai Rolls. They all add up. So if some clubs will, like Aberdeen, will sell one player for a big amount, Miovski, but then if you're able to move on players who have either kind of reached their end point at Hearts or are squad players, and you can flip them and make money, then that's good if it allows you to do something else with the squad. So I share your concern short term, but I think it's probably a good move for Hearts and Oyegoke in the long term.
Yeah, and if it's Hellas Verona, which I should clarify, I've got absolutely no reason to believe that beyond someone messaging me telling me that. They do appear to play a back 3, so maybe he would fit in well there, and it's where Josh Doig went and then got Hibs a big sell-on fee. So hopefully we've slotted in, if he does go, hopefully we slot in a nice sell-on percentage. So if he does well over in Italy, a move that at this point we don't know if it's definitely happening or not. But if he does, then hopefully he goes on for a bigger move and earns us another percentage down the line.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's common practice now, is to get to try and put a sell on in these types of deals, especially someone who is, I think he's still only 22 as well. So there is there's something there, and the Hearts could benefit in the future. But we'll see how that plays out over the next few days. Laurie, thank you very much for joining me on this Saturday evening. I've taken up enough of your time as we've dissected everything to do with the 3-2 win over Kilmarnock and more. I'll be back with someone. We have Craig's back on Monday, so we'll be back doing something at some point next week. Not sure what the schedule is, but there's loads of stuff on heartstandard.co.uk, so be sure to subscribe there and get on over and check everything out. And also, if you are not aware, I'm sure most of you are aware, Laurie is the host of Scarce Around the Funnel. Definitely worth a listen with Laurie, Mark Donaldson and Scott McIntosh every single week, so do check that out. But once again, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much, Laurie. Goodbye. Hit recording. End.